up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about how strong is the Gurren Lagann universe, mainly the anti-spiral and the Gurren Lagann mech itself, since they're the most powerful beings in this entire show. Now, this video was actually suggested to me by one of my subscribers over a year ago by the name of Crimson Carter. He told me, hey, can you do a how strong is Gurren Lagann universe video and a review on the show itself? Personally, at that time, the reason why I didn't do it was because I already watched the show 2 to 3 years prior, and I didn't really like it. I watched it halfway through and I kind of quit, and I really didn't want to do the video that much. I was going to do it eventually, but I was kind of holding off on it because, like I said, I didn't really care for the series. But since he was such a loyal, subscriber of mine, and he subscribed to me for quite a while, and he supported me on multiple videos, I felt like I kind of owed him, and I felt like he deserved it. So here's a big thank you to Crimson Carter for this video and the suggestion for this video. And talking about thanking people, I want to thank a couple new subscribers of mine. One by the name of OmniKev4Chill99, next Axel, then Fazboys Production, and finally Power Level Log 1089. So yeah, like I said, I didn't really care for this show, but since he's a subscriber of mine and since he supported me so much, I felt like I owed him. So big shout out to Crimson Carter once again. So before I get into this video, I do want to say it's going to be a little tricky, and this is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little confusing for you guys a bit. I'm going to skip quite a bit of the show. The show is 27 episodes long, but most of the show, there isn't really anything impressive feat-wise. Most of the feats prior, like to the anti-spirals being mentioned or shown, is not really that impressive. It's usually around like mountain to city level, like destructive like power. But after that, we get into some crazy powers and abilities and feats happening. So the first half was them fighting against the Spiral King. The second half was them fighting against the anti-spiral itself. Now the Spiral King himself wasn't that powerful, but he's very important and integral to the story itself. He was there to basically prevent the Earth's population from reaching over 1 million, because when the civilization reaches over 1 million lives, it gains too much spiral power. And when that happens, the anti-spirals come in to destroy all their life by having the moon crash into the planet itself, destroying all the life that's on the planet to rid or reduce the spiral power, because this will cause a very catastrophic event because of it. So the anti-spirals are not actually evil. They're kind of technically, they are the enemy in this story, but they're not bad. They're doing it to prevent a very big and evil event that's going to happen. So yeah, that's important to explain because there's going to be some stuff that goes off of this. Also, when they killed the Spiral King, they kind of turned him into a supercomputer. They took his conscious and they turned him into a supercomputer. So most of the impressive feats and information we get is directly from him because he's very knowledgeable. So also what happened in the first half, this is very important, is there was this one queen or princess that was saved by the main character Simon. As he saved her, him and her kind of formed a bond. They kind of fell in love, and when they beat the Spiral King, 7 years had passed, and as 7 years had passed, they became a couple. And then one day they were just walking down the street in the city, and for some reason she just turns and changes, and she has a 180 shift on her personality. What happened was, apparently we find out that she was actually created by the anti-spiral himself. He created her, and she was created a program to basically start the cataclysm whenever the population reached 1 million. And since it already did, her programming basically activated and it changed her. So now she's speaking for the anti-spiral himself to communicate to the Earth on what's happening. As she goes on to say, she says, the Spiral Nemesis will bring about the universe's destruction. Now, some of you guys are probably going to wonder, who is Spiral Nemesis? Because usually when we hear people talking about Gurren Lagann, we hear the Gurren Lagann mech itself and the anti-spiral. The anti-spiral especially, but we have the Spiral Nemesis, which seems to be a bigger threat, and a threat that's so big that it will cause the destruction of the universe itself. So it's a universal level being, right? It's a little weird and it's a little confusing because they don't really go into the Spiral Nemesis. We don't really see the Spiral Nemesis. We see the anti-spiral trying to prevent the Spiral Nemesis thing from happening, but we don't see the Spiral Nemesis. Now, when I was first watching it, I thought the anti-spiral was the Spiral Nemesis, but then I saw a little more and I was like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. So the Spiral Nemesis, apparently, from what I've seen, is not actually a being, and that's why we don't really see the Spiral Nemesis. The Spiral Nemesis is more like a catastrophic event that will happen if the if there's too much spiral power. When there's too much spiral power, it creates the Spiral Nemesis, which is this catastrophic event that destroys the universe. So for any of you guys who try to power scale it, just know that the Spiral Nemesis is not actually a being. It's an event that happens, and this event is a universal destroying event. And she also goes on to say, we anti-spirals exist to prevent that event. So like I said, the anti-spiral is not evil. It's trying to, the way it's going about it is obviously aggressive and kind of vicious, but it's doing this to prevent the destruction of the universe itself. So the anti-spiral himself is not trying to destroy the universe, he's trying to prevent it. And the Spiral Nemesis is not really a person, more an event, so he's trying to stop the event itself. And he's using her and these whole moon colliding events to prevent it from happening. She goes on to say, it's the power of the spiral will destroy the universe. Now, we need to find out what is the spiral power and why will it destroy the universe. Luckily for us, the show does explain it later on, like literally right after this, as the Spiral King, since he's a CPU now at this point, he's a computer, he's basically explaining to them, what is spiral power? He goes on to say, spiral power is the power of evolution. Life forms carry helix DNA, galaxies, and take spiral shape. Then he goes on to say they are amplified to infinite levels by spiral power, which magnifies everything. And then says that is the underpinning of this universe. So he goes on to explain what spiral power is and why it's so dangerous and why it's so powerful. So like I said, the anti-spirals are trying to prevent the growth of spiral power, and they are against spiral power. Why are they against spiral power? We get explained a little bit later how this starts this universe ending event, and it's pretty crazy. But the spiral power itself, it just is the power of evolution. So it could be biological evolution, like how we evolve or animals evolve, but it could also be psychological evolution, like how you evolve mentally, or evolution through the process of like social standards, like how society has evolved. That is all form of evolution. So in their universe, that's all form of spiral power. Also, they said every living being has it in their DNA because the DNA is in a helix, which is basically a shape of a spiral. So even things with spiral shapes has spiral power. So galaxies themselves, since they're all in like spiral, have spiral power. And when they have the spiral power, the more they have, the more they evolve, the more spiral they have, the more the power gets amplified. It says to infinite levels. I think they mean more like you can grow infinitely instead of it being actual infinite, because people are going to usually debate saying this means that spiral power is infinite, and it technically is like infinitely growing, but that's nothing new. But the way some people might use it is, if they have spiral power, that means they have infinite power. No. They have the potential to grow infinitely and amplify their power by, large magnitudes, but they themselves do not have infinite power right there. It's just they have infinite growth. And this causes the end of the universe somehow. As this goes on, both the princess and the Spiral Kings go on to say, in 3 weeks' time, the moon will leave its orbit and impact the Earth. So these, the anti-spiral is very powerful. He's able to cause the destruction of planets by moving moons itself. And he does this, like I said, to prevent the destruction of the universe as a whole. So after this, we have these anti-spiral start sending his minions to attack the Earth. And as he does, he sends this big ship. And this big ship starts to fight against the Gurren Lagann mech. The Gurren Lagann mech ends up punching it so hard that you see some glass-like thing shattering in the back, and as it completely shatters, it sends it flying. So what happens here? Luckily, they do explain a bit of what happened, and it's quite impressive. As the Gurren Lagann punched the thing and sent it flying and smashing through it, they go on to say, as one of the scientists says, looks like a hole in the fabric of space and time. Then they say he sent it flying in the far end of the space-time continuum. And what happened there, and this was pretty impressive because before this, like I said, there wasn't really anything impressive. These mechs have done some impressive stuff like destroying, not moons. They were able to destroy mountains and cities, but nothing even on planet level. But yet at this point, his Gurren Lagann mech was able to evolve so much to the point where he was able to punch one of this ships so hard that it broke the fabric of reality, as they said, of fabric of space-time, and sending it flying into the end of the space-time continuum. Now, how powerful is this? I can't really categorize it directly, because it's not like you could have an exact amount of, you know, energy you can put into it, like saying it's this many tons or this many megatons or this many joules of power that it takes. But it obviously is very impressive to be able to hit somebody so hard you know, tear a hole in the fabric of reality, send it flying through the space-time continuum. Now, is this universal level of power? I wouldn't say so. We've seen beings like Boo do this by screaming. This doesn't mean that it's universal, but it's still very powerful and impressive. As this goes on, the rest of the people, since like the situation starts to die down after they beat it, the humans come back together to start a meeting to talk about how to stop this. And as they're talking about this, main scientist goes on to say, as he shows the recording of the girl talking, saying, by spiral nemesis, she probably means the destruction of the universe. So yeah, he goes on to say it's the destruction of the universe. So this is why I don't think the spiral nemesis is an actual being, even though with the title of Nemesis, it sounds like a person or somebody that is causing this, but it is more so just an event. So he says she probably means the destruction of the universe. So when the universe gets destroyed by the spiral power, it's just called the spiral nemesis. So the destruction itself is the universal thing. And as this is happening, since she was taken away, she left to where the domain of the anti-spirals were, and she had a ring on her. As she left, the scientists were able to actually find her energy signature and where she was. They go on to say an imaginary oscillating time-space located between membranes of the dimensional universes we call the 10th and 11th dimensions. So what happened? The anti-spirals, they find out their location. Where's their location? They state that in an imaginary oscillating time-space located between the membranes of dimensional universes, we call the 10th and 11th dimension. Now, if you guys don't know anything about string theory, we know that the original string theory, which there's two different ones. The second one is like a mathematical formula, which I don't know why people use that. The normal one, the regular string theory, goes up to 11 dimensions. Anything past that is the mathematical formula, which usually people say there's like actually 20 dimensions, there's more than 11, there's like 30, 40, but those are actually just the mathematical equations. They aren't literally actual dimensions. Those are just mathematical terms and stuff like that. So usually the real actual amount of dimensions is the 11 dimensions, and this is usually how we scale how powerful these characters are. So like if you can destroy the universe, the entire universe, you will be infinite 4D, I'm pretty sure. So you'll be infinite 4D. So if you're able to destroy on a 10th or 11th dimension, you'll be way past infinite 4D, will be way past universal or multiversal. People put this like in probably like boundless and stuff like that, or outer scaling or whatever. So let's put this in really high levels. So since they're able to be in the 10th and 11th dimension, that'll put them in a high level. But I do think that even though they mentioned the 10th and 11th, I don't think this dimension is really, like if you were to destroy this dimension, I don't think it would put you at hyperversal or outerversal. And I'll explain why, because we see this, we get a little bit more of Feats and explanation on what that would mean. But as we see it, like I said, they stated that the anti-spirals were in the in between dimension plays. So the anti-spiral is very powerful that he was able to not only like transport his race from the regular universe, the 3D/4D universe, to a dimension between both the 10th and 11th dimensions, which usually scales up to really high levels, and being this oscillating time space. What they basically mean was, they explained with imaginary is this dimension that's in between the 10th and 11th is the dimension of imagination. So you can imagine what you want. So basically like a dream world, whatever, or something like that, right? So if you go to the imaginary dimension, this is a dimension, it's not the 10th or the 11th dimension, it's just between those two. It's between those two, and it's a separate universe of pure imagination. So whatever you imagine will happen in that universe. So as they find the location, they go on, as the Spiral King says, what we call the universe is constructed on ambiguity. And then he says, it only becomes a fixed reality when observed. So he also says, and I'm going to say quite a bit because he says quite a bit, and I'll just go into what he means by this. And then he goes on to say that is a fundamental law of the universe, even a pocket universe. So what does this mean? Because there's quite a bit of talking about this. When he says what we call the universe is a construct of ambiguity, and then saying it's only fixed reality when observed, and there's the fundamental laws of the universe, even in a pocket universe, what he means is all universes are imaginary, and imaginary being like you think of it, but it isn't real. The only time it becomes real is once when you actually study it. So these other universes or dimensions aren't really real until we actually study it and realize it. So our universe, since we already know it and know the knowledge of it and how it works, it is reality. So the imaginary realm, the reason why it is not exactly reality is because it's imagination. You cannot comprehend this dimension. So if you cannot comprehend it, it does not become reality. So it's an imaginary world, but it's real, you know? So it's a little weird. It's a lot of deep science, like quantum physics type of stuff. So if you guys don't get it, it makes sense because I'm struggling too. It's kind of confusing. But from what I'm just getting from here is every universe that you see, even pocket universe that you see, would be created by them observing it. If it's not observed, then it's not going to be become reality yet. So it's a lot of mumbo jumbo of just saying, if you know it, then it becomes a thing. If you don't know it, then it's going to be imaginary, pretty much. Now, does this mean there's other universes and dimensions? Most likely pocket universe and stuff, but from this one, we only see the imaginary universe and the 4D, regular 3D, 4D universe. And these events only really I've seen that it affects the 3D or 4D universe, or maybe those other universes just really don't exist and they're just like still theory. But as we go on, they talk about how they can get there, and they say, but we should assume the enemy has warp capabilities too. So what happened was, before they even found the location of the Spiral King, the main character Simon unlocked a new ability where he can teleport, and it's different than how you see with Dragon Ball with Goku doing the instant transmission. Is basically they don't teleport themselves really; they open up a dimensional rift and they teleport or transport through it. So Simon was able to do this. And the way he does this is by envisioning that thing. If he can think of it, he can warp to it. So since before they didn't know where they were, they couldn't really warp to there since he had the ability. But since now they know the exact place, even though it's outside of the dimensionalities and all this other stuff, he can transport to it by just thinking of it. So all he needed was the coordinates. So now he knows where he is, so he can teleport there. But he also mentions that since the anti-spiral is very powerful, he would be able to do it too. So he would be capable of warping too. So they both can teleport by just thinking about the place and going there. After this, we see another impressive thing. Since the moon, we find out that the moon that they had in their universe technically actually wasn't the real moon. It was a fake moon. It was actually a ship. It was the Spiral King ship. And the ship was basically used by the Spiral King and the Spiral Warriors to fight against the anti-spiral. But once when they lost, the anti-spiral took it as his and then created it into the moon, and that's how it was able to collide into the Earth, because he was able to fire the engines to fly towards the Earth itself. So what happened to the real moon? Luckily, we get this we get the answer as they basically shoot out grappling hooks into space, and you see these weird portal things. And as they do it, they go on to say dimensional anchors have penetrated imaginary space. And we see the moon getting pulled out of this imaginary space. So what happened? The anti-spiral beat the spirals. As he beat them, he subjugated them. He took the Spiral King ship, converted it into the moon, took the actual moon and shoved it into the imaginary dimension where they hide in. So that's where the Spiral King was residing in. And that's the dimension that's in between the 10th and the 11th, which is purely imagination. So he took the moon and put in there, but with these grappling hooks, they were able to use the technology by, like I said, the warp technology. So they used the warp technology on the grappling hooks and let it had it warp through to the imaginary universe. So they were pulling it out of the imaginary universe to our universe, which is just a pure reality universe. So the grappling hooks, even with their teleportation, not only can they teleport, but they can teleport like objects and stuff into there, and their objects are strong enough to pull the moon, which is insane. That's insane how powerful the ship is, but then again, the ship was the size of the moon itself, so it makes sense that it was able to pull it. So after they pulled the moon out and replaced the fake moon, they used the fake moon, since it was a ship, to go into the imaginary universe themselves. As they teleport there, Simon is trying to lock onto the energy signature of his girl, and as he does it, he goes there, and there's a big holograph of her like T-posing. So she's there, and he's trying to find where the anti-spiral is so he can beat him and free her. But as he tries to teleport directly to there, he keeps on warping back to the same area over and over again, and he keeps on seeing her. So even as he tries to warp, he keeps on coming back, so he's wondering what's happening. And as they're all confused, the Spiral King goes on to say, he says, it is no exaggeration to say that our enemy is the universe itself. So what happened was, they tried to get to her, they couldn't. The universe was, for some reason, keep on putting them in a loop, bringing them back to the same place and position every time, and they were getting kind of frustrated and confused. And as they were getting confused, the anti-spiral starts talking to them, and they're wondering what the hell, how does he talk from all directions? So the Spiral King goes on to explain that he's like, it's not an exaggeration. It's most likely the anti-spiral is the universe itself. Since this is an imaginary universe, you can do whatever you want. You can imagine things. You can imagine yourself going more powerful, this and that, since it has the power of imagination. So being in this imaginary world, he imagined him being the universe itself and controlling the universe. So he was able to control this universe. This would be putting on universal level of, I guess you could say, reality warping or control. But what you could put it there, but the thing is, he could only do this in the imaginary universe and not in the other ones, because in the imaginary universe you can imagine what you want. So it really doesn't matter. It's not really about power, it's about the power of your own imagination. So if, let's say, he was in their universe, the 3rd/4th dimension, or universe, he wouldn't have been a universe. He wouldn't be able to control the universe. And the reason why I'm saying this is because a lot of people say, well, you see right here, he has universal controlling power, so he's universal bare minimum, right? But the thing is, he's in a dimension where you can control it or do whatever you want by just thinking things up. That's the whole point of the imaginary universe. You can do a lot of crazy stuff that you couldn't do in the regular universe. So if he went to the regular universe, no, he would not be able to control it, because the regular universe does not operate on imagination. It operates on reality itself. So he wouldn't be able to do that. That's why I'm explaining that. As he goes on, he says, if you transform Super Galaxy Gurren into humanoid mode, it will amplify our spiral power tens of times over. So what's happening here, since they went to the dimension, and now this imaginary dimension, since this anti-spiral has been living there, he kind of controls it now. He's been there for a while, so he's controlling it. So they need to increase their power, and to increase their power, they're going to change the ship into a more humanoid form, because as we were explained in the show, there's different forms of people and things that can gather certain amounts of spiral power, and the more certain forms are more attuned to spiral power, and the form that is the most attuned or to spiral power, to increase spiral power, is humanoid forms. So humans have the most spiral energy in them, and they can create the most spiral energy, and anything that resembles a humanoid form will have more spiral power because of the helix and DNA or whatever. So the ship normally already has quite a bit of power, but they can increase it by changing the ship's structure from a ship to a humanoid mech thing like the Gurren Lagann. That's why these big mech thingies have so much spiral power, because they're in the form of a humanoid being. So they're going to change the ship. They're going to combine the Gurren Lagann with the ship itself, and in doing so, they're going to change the form with imagination into a humanoid form, which should increase the power by tens of times. We don't know exactly how much, but you could put it very low, 10 to 90 times more powerful. They're able to increase their power. And he says, becoming a being with possesses power rivaling that of a microcosm. So he basically explains the full extent of how powerful this will be. Once you do it, it grows to tens of times. Well, how powerful they are they going to be when they grow tens of times more powerful? Apparently as strong as a microcosm. Now, this might lead people to believe that that means that these guys are going to be universal level. Technically, yes, but technically, no. They're going to be having the power of a micro universe, but not the universe itself. We all know the difference of these size. Micro meaning, microscopic. Our universe is just regular universe size, and then there's macro, which is the size of either a universe that's bigger than the universe or multiple universes placed on top of it. Like in Dragon Ball, it is not there's the universe, and then there is the macro verse or macrocosm. The universe that we see in Dragon Ball is just the universe they live in, and the macrocosm is all these other realms or realities on top of the universe itself. That's what creates a macrocosm. So micro is weaker and smaller than the universe itself. So it's like they're kind of getting to more universal levels of power, but this is a microscopic level of universe level of power. But as this is happening, there's this water or this ocean that comes over that starts swallowing up the mech, because the mech was destroying a bunch of the Anti-Spiral's fleet. As it was destroying it, he said this wave of water type of thing, which gets explained to be the fabric of space-time is being compressed until it's ultra dense. So kind of like a black hole, where gravity gets gravity in space gets condensed and collided into a smaller, finer point, increasing the gravitational pressure. So this sea is basically like kind of a liquidy, soupy version of a black hole. So they get sucked into this black hole that was generated by this machine that uses spiral power. It absorbs spiral power, which is just mass and everything, and then it converts it into highly dense gravity, which is fabric of reality, and it crushes them. And as they're getting crushed, they send one of their guys. He basically sacrifices his life to go in, break the force field that was protecting the machine that was generating it. As they broke through the force field, he went inside, destroying the machine, blowing it up, killing himself, but destroying the machine itself, which stopped the production of this gravity and releasing it. But as this happens, one of his big motherships starts to go and attack the Gurren Lagann by grabbing onto literal planets and converting these planets into pure spiral energy, throwing it at the Gurren Lagann, but the Gurren Lagann was able to tank it without taking any damage. So the Gurren Lagann is very powerful. It was able to tank multiple planets that were being converted into pure spiral energy at it, and it was not taking any damage. The reason it wasn't taking damage was because it had a force field. So it wasn't the actual mech itself that was handling the damage, but the force field itself. But still, that's very impressive. So at the very least, they can tank multiple planets being thrown at it at high speeds with just the force field alone protecting it. And then after this, the ship is like, what, screw it, throwing these planets is not working, so it starts firing missiles at it. But once again, as it fires the missiles, the Gurren Lagann blocks it, but when it blocks it, it still damages it. And one of the people, the crew is wondering, what the hell is happening? We literally blocked it, we set up our shields, it blocked the damage, but it somehow went through. So they go on to say, according to my monitor, the attack is being blocked completely. So yes, even the sensors are picking up the registration of that the missiles have been blocked. And then the Spiral King goes on to say probability, altercation, alteration missiles. They're negating the probability of us blocking their attack. So what does that mean? So these missiles, apparently, even when they're being blocked, they can go past being blocked. Why? They're probability altercation missiles. So what can prevent something or probably will happen, it can make happen. So it kind of, I wouldn't say it makes the impossible happen, but it makes, if there's any possibility to something happening, it will happen with these missiles. So like I said, like the missiles, the way they work is they alter possibilities. So if there's any possibility that it could have the effect of hitting or doing some damage, it will happen. So even though they blocked it, there's still a possibility that it could break through. So as long as there's even a chance that it could happen, it will happen. So even if it's like against it. So yes, they blocked it. It was preventing it, and it should have prevented the damage being done to them directly. But there's still a possibility that it could break through. So even with that bit of possibility, it turned the situation where it was not possible to be possible. Now, let's say it's a completely impossible chance of being able to, like, let's say, damage somebody, then yeah, it will not. But in this case, it definitely could, because there's definitely a possibility that it could break through the shield itself. So basically, you can't block against it at all. If you block or try to defend or try to raise the shield, it will just go through it, because it will negate I wouldn't say it will negate the impossible, but it will negate the possibility that it won't happen, as long as there's some possibility that it could happen. Now, I think there's an easier way to handle those missiles, though. We don't get to explain how powerful they are at all. We don't see how powerful they are, but they could most likely be around planet level. The reason why I say that is because the shields that was tanking the the planets being thrown that was getting turned into spiral energy, they needed to use the shields. If they could handle the planets being thrown at them, they wouldn't have had the shields up. They would have just tanked completely. So the fact that they had the shields for that, and then also for the missiles, and the missiles did damage to the mech itself, not severe damage, but enough damage that showcases that these missiles would be around planet level. So even though they can, break the possibilities of not being hit by hitting them, it won't hit more than planet level. So if there's a being that is way more than planet level, it will hit them, but depending on how durable they are, if they're around planet level, it'll most likely kill them. If they're more powerful, it might, it might do some damage or might not do any at all, depending on how strong they are. But after this, the Spiral King is he's showing up a little more, and he's trying to explain to Simon, the main character, why he's doing what he's doing. Because Simon's like, why are you doing all this? He goes on to say, see the universe destroyed by the power of Spiral. The spiral power is the force which binds together life forms in the universe. The growth of galaxies is proportional to the growth of life, but the end result will loss of control over the spiral power, and all life become its own galaxy. These mega galaxies would devour each other, becoming a black hole, and then this universe would return to nothingness. So yeah. What does that mean? He goes on to explain why he's doing this, how the spiral energy creates the destruction of the universe and everything. So he said, with more spiral power, the more of a chance and the closer the universe is going to be destroyed. And he wanted to show him the history on how, explain to him how it happens and the history of it. Like he said, spiral power is the force which binds life forms in the universe. So without spiral power, there is no universe, but with too much of it, it can overpower the universe, thus creating a total collapse, destroying the universe. So that's why it's bad. It's basically a power that needs to be regulated. If there's too little, it could end up dying. If there's too much, it could end up, causing everything to collapse. And as the Spiral King was saying, there's already too much spiral power, and it increases really rapidly, so you need to maintain it heavily. And that's why he's going to such extreme lengths just to, prevent it from happening. So, and since every life form has it, and everything has it, the more life forms you have, the more spiral power you have, and the more increases the destruction of the universe. And then the fact that he says the growth of galaxies is proportional to the growth of life, it also means the galaxies have importance too. And it's really important that, mention the galaxies and the humans, because in this universe, when you gain more power, when they gain more, the life forms, you get turned into humanoid form, which has the most amount of potential of increasing spiral power. And when you evolve, it increases your spiral power more and more. And the more your spiral power increases, the less control they have over it. And the less control they have over it, the more they grow until the point they all become like their own galaxy. And when they become their own galaxy, they collide into each other, creating a mega galaxy, devouring each other, and then it creates a black hole, and then it will basically destroy the universe into nothingness. So this is basically like Hawking's radiation, where we talk about the universe at the end of it. All these like stars are going to blow up. They're going to create black holes. They're going to release a ton of energy. They're going to collide into one, and as doing so, they can produce too much energy and then end up destroying it, right? But in this case, it's more like galaxies. So basically, they get the power, they have the human form, they create the power, they evolve, they have more power. Once when they get too much power, they lose control. Once when they lose control, they gain too much power too quickly, and they end up just turning themselves into a galaxy. So the galaxies you see out there, they some of them are naturally formed, but others can be formed from people who gain too much power. As they become galaxies, they collide into each other, creating mega galaxies. As these mega galaxies collide and increase, they create they end up forming a black hole, because that's what happens when you condense a bunch of energy into one. It ends up creating a black hole, and the bigger the black hole becomes, it ends up getting so big to the point that it ends up swallowing up everything, destroying everything, and making it to nothing. So that's what the Spiral Nemesis is, and that's the event, that's how it works, and that's how spiral power literally ends up destroying this universe, by converting all these people into galaxies, and then make these galaxies turn into mega galaxies, creating a massive black hole, then it tears everything apart. So that's why he needs to stop it. This is a universal level event. the beings, they can go up to galaxy level when they increase their highest. After that, we have his ship going. It does something pretty crazy. It starts to leave and it disappears. It's teleporting away, and you would think it's just normally teleporting, but apparently it's not. As the Spiral King goes on to say, "Be careful. They're using the random Schrödinger warping to sneak up on upon us. They're manipulating multi-dimensional probability fluctuations. They will attack as they shift up and down the time axis. Prepare barrages against all possible points along space and time axis. Probability space where enemy units exist. Near past, -10. Near future, +8. So, what does all this mean, pretty much? There's a little more after this, but I want to go through this because this is quite a bit. So, the ship that they're fighting is the motherboard ship. It basically uses this warp technology, but this warp technology is different than regular. It's called a Schrödinger warp technology. And if you guys know anything about Schrödinger's cat and quantum physics, it's basically a whole like theory thing about Schrödinger putting his cat in plutonium in a box, and basically whatever happens. There's two situations that can happen. One, the plutonium kills the cat. The other one is the cat can survive. So both these possibilities are true until you observe it, and that's why they start talking about like when you don't observe something, it's imaginary and anything can be possible. But once when you know it, it becomes reality, and that's what's happening with this ship. Once it is found, then it becomes reality. But while using this warp technology, it will not become reality. It can attack at any point. It's possible to do it at any point. So yeah, once again, I know it's going to get a little confusing, but what it means is like when you're teleporting, you basically where the person can come, the angles. But when you're using the Schrödinger warping one, you don't know where it can come from. It can come from any angle or any time. So basically, it attacks from all angles and all points of time throughout the universe itself or the multiple dimensions itself. Now, it is a little confusing, but the way I see this is basically teleporting itself is warping space and time because space and time are intertwined. And if you can warp, like create a wormhole, you're basically folding space, time, and moving through it. So you're warping through it anyway. So I don't know what specifically. I guess the thing about like the teleportation machine going through time is a little bit more unique, but it's the same thing as teleporting because you don't know where the person will end up anyway. So that Schrödinger thing is already a thing because when somebody teleports, you don't know. You're usually, when these characters fight these people, they're just predicting where they're going to be. But the time thing, it does add a little thing different. But also you need to realize that teleporting is already messing with time itself. So that also doesn't really make sense. It's either saying they're moving through time, but when you teleport, you're moving through time anyway. But it was saying it can attack from the future or the past. So they set up the system to attack from all angles and all points of future and past. So you can, basically stop it. As this goes on, the scientist says the gauge is saying something about a Planck time coefficient. What does that mean? We know Planck time is the shortest amount of time for anything, like any short amount of time. Meaning in this scenario was the machine or the system itself is able to predict any of these possibilities and analyze within Planck time. So in the shortest possible amount of time, the computer is able to analyze. Most computers are able to analyze like around like light speed and stuff like that, but the information for this is at Planck time itself. So that's how they're able to attack from the different angles. As they go on, the Gurren Lagann is trying to increase its power by increasing the spiral, so it creates a bunch of drills and it goes into the system and is drilling to increase its power. And it goes on to say, all right, let's do it. Let's punch a hole in the past, future, and all at once. And as they do this fire off attack, and you see multiple different points where it could teleport from, and it ends up destroying it. So what does this mean? They're using the teleportation thing to attack from every angle and at every point of time. The difference between regular teleportation, you can go anywhere, but it's always going to be one place you're going to be, right? So like say you're teleporting. You're going to teleport either behind the guy or to the side of the guy. And the time thing there is it basically cuts time because it's supposed to be instant, right? But with the Schrödinger one, you can teleport anywhere, just like regular teleportation. But the only thing different is not only can you teleport anywhere, but you will be teleporting anywhere all at the same time. So when he comes out, he can basically fire an attack not from one area when it teleports, but all areas. Not only all areas from all of space, but all of time. So you can attack from the future and the past all at once. But when they were doing the mech, they were basically activating the lasers on all points, so it will attack from any possibility. So even though there's like multiple possibilities, as long as you attack from every possibility that there is, you can defend against this. The best way I would see like somebody being able to do this with like regular power is like, we see a lot of characters that have the ability to release a massive amount of energy from their body and create this big explosion. So like, let's say somebody like the Anti-Spiral was using this ship against another fictional character, and that character does not have this like technology. Basically, all they would have to do is condense, create the energy in their body and release it, create a big explosion from their body, and that could just basically attack from all sides, because the circumference of it would be that of a circle. So there's no way to attack them. It will come from all points. It basically covers it from all points, so you can destroy it. It's a little confusing, like I said. There's going to be a lot of like stuff that I'm going to say that's a little... I have to explain quite a bit, because even for me, it was like, what the fuck does this even mean? It's a lot of quantum physics. The guy who did this, who created this, oh my god, it's just so much. But like I said, the difference between this teleportation and the other one is, usually when you teleport, you come from one place. This one, it comes from all places at once, and it can not only just skip through time, but it can go through past and future. So you can travel from future and past. But the easiest way to go against this or protect against this is just be able to blow out, release enough energy all around your body to protect it. And the coefficient thingy being Planck was basically meaning it's able to analyze the information all in like pretty much like in an instant. So after this, as the Gurren Lagann is powering up inside the ship and increasing its power, they go on to say there's so much power in our engine that it's like a galaxy is about to be born. And that's not an over-exaggeration, because they already explained by the anti-spiral that the more spiral energy they have, they end up, and eventually they're going to end up turning into a galaxy. That's the end of all life forms. When they gain too much power, they can get stronger, but they end up losing control and they end up just turning into a galaxy and dying. Once they die, they just turn into a galaxy, and then that power is going to just keep on growing until eventually it ends up destroying the universe as a whole. And we see right here the galaxies growing in there. So the Gurren Lagann is kind of maximizing its power output, and the ship itself too. As this is happening, he fires off a final blast against the ship itself, blows it up. You see a massive explosion that lights up 2 planets, and it starts to dim and it goes away. So what happened was they charged up fully to gain enough power that the galaxy started forming the mech. Unlike a human, where you can't really control it because you're a person, the mechs are made specifically for that. So if it gains a galaxy level amount of power, it can handle it. So at that point, I would put the Gurren Lagann's energy output to galaxy level, since it was forming a galaxy. And its attack potency right there was strong enough to destroy basically a planet, or have a planet-sized explosion. After this, we finally get introduced to the Anti-Spiral. As he shows up, it got really weird when I was watching it. For some reason, we were seeing like the story, and then it switched over to like another story. It's kind of like, in Naruto, where Madara had put the infinite Tsukiyomi, and it went from what was happening to like this illusional world. Basically the same thing happened. As he came, he says they're all being held prisoner in an extra-dimensional space. They're separated series of universes. They're created in instant as they're perceived. As long as they have intelligence, they will never be able to break free. And so what happened, as the Anti-Spiral arrived, he set off he set off this thing, I forgot what it's called. It's like an extra-dimensional labyrinth or prison. But what he does is basically, once they acknowledge the universe and these dimensions and stuff, once you acknowledge it, you get trapped in this prison where you're stuck in all these other realities. And you're basically stuck in an infinite amount of realities. As long as there's any possibility, you're going to be stuck in that. So basically, they're not stuck in an illusion like the infinite Tsukiyomi. They're actually in real realities, but
they're also not in those realities. They're just mentally they are. Physically, they're still in that reality, but they're just stuck. They can't move. So once again, it's confusing. A lot of this stuff is confusing. If you want me to explain again, I'll just explain it through this way simply, because there's a complex explanation and then there's a simple explanation. So the simple explanation is basically, usually, multiverse theory is just a theory. So we haven't, like right now, it's just like there's a possibility that there's multiple universes out there. But once when there's proof or evidence that there are other universes out there, it's no longer a theory and it's no longer just possibilities. It is 100% a certainty. It's reality itself at that point. But in our world, we haven't found that. But in the Gurren Lagann universe, the people, they have found out that the multiverse theory is not just a theory. It's not that there's a possibility that there's other universes out there. Now they know that there are other universes out there. And the only way to know this is if you have, consciousness, like evolved consciousness. If you're like an animal, you're not going to have enough consciousness or awareness of, life and science and this stuff. But as humans, as people, we have enough intelligence to understand this. So we understand the concept. All we need is the proof. Once when you have the proof, it ends up becoming reality. So what happened was, once when it becomes reality, your mind cannot register the reality of infinite universes. You guys pretty much stuck in this psychological infinite reality loop. So before, when we believed in like the multiverse theory, the multiverse existed, but they have no effect because there aren't been proven. But once when the human mind realizes that it's been proven, then it makes those from a possibility to reality. So in their mind, now they're actually going through all the realities. So before we could just think about it, but now they're living it. They're stuck in it. They're living in it. So that's the problem, and that's one, I guess, the dangers in the Gurren Lagann universe is if you were to find out evidence or proof that there are infinite universes, then your mind is gonna get transferred and transported through those infinite universes, even though your physical body is still in that one said universe. So they saw the truth, and the truth basically made them go through all these realities. Those are not like fake universes. They're real ones that they were trapped in. And as they're stuck in this, he starts talking to the Spiral King. Since the Spiral King is a computer and not an actual person, his mind didn't go through it, so he can acknowledge the multiverse without having his mind being transported throughout the multiverse itself. And the anti-spiral starts talking to him, saying, you came all the way over here in the space between the 10th and 11th dimension, so we could finish you. So yeah, once again, mentioned a dimension between 10th and 11th, and I've heard people saying, well, these characters are 10th and 11th dimensional, but I'll go into why that isn't the case, because there is something that kind of goes against that, but that would be later. So we find out there's this one little creature in this entire show, this little like pig creature that helps the characters along the way, and we find out that this pig creature is not just a regular creature, it's actually a humanoid animal thing that the Spiral King made. The Spiral King made, like I said, in the first half, he made these warriors that were human animal hybrids. And these human animal hybrids, they cannot create spiral energy themselves because they weren't created naturally. They were created through unnatural means. But except for this one being that was created by the Spiral King, that was this little pig creature that was following them throughout the story. It is kind of like human and stuff, so it has a conscious, and by having a conscious, it's able to actually access the spiral power. And now it went from its animal form to its humanoid form to increase his power to fight off the anti-spiral. But as he did this, he realized that this was a problem because the anti-spiral says the instant extra-dimensional space is perceived, it's made real. And he was trapped in the not psychic illusion, because it's not an illusion, it's reality. He's stuck in now these other realities by coming into a level of consciousness where he can understand. In his animal form, he cannot understand the scope of what these realities mean. But when he comes to his human form, he has the brain of a human, so he has enough intelligence to understand. And like I said, basically it just means that if we were in their universe and we found evidence that the multiverse theory is true because they saw it, if we saw it, we would have been stuck in all these possibilities mentally, physically, we would still be there. But even though that happened later on, the main character ends up breaking out of this,
reality loop, and he ends up and then the other guys also end up breaking out of it. How did they break out of it? Even though Spiral King was the anti-spiral made it sound like that the moment you perceive it, you're instantly stuck and you can never remove out of it. It isn't true. Yes, it does do that. So, like, let's say there's any other fictional character. Like, let's say Superman, for example. Superman, if he goes to the Gurren Lagann universe and he sees the multiverse, unlike in other fictional works, acknowledging the multiverse or realizing that it's true doesn't do anything. You just know that there's a multiverse out there. Like in Marvel and DC, Superman knows that there's a multiverse. That doesn't do anything to him. But in the Gurren Lagann universe, if he was there, the moment he saw the multiverse, he would have been stuck in a loop in all these multiverses. Now, some people say, well, he would be stuck in it and he can't break out. But clearly, these guys can break out. So I do think Superman could break out. What I mean is, people might use this in an argument saying, well, if they were in the Gurren Lagann universe, they wouldn't be able, the moment they perceive the multiverse, they would be stuck in it. But clearly, yes, you will be trapped in it, but that doesn't mean you cannot break out of it. You would get stuck, but you can still have the possibility to break out. And since Simon and them can do it, it really depends on the other character's power. So if the character's powerful enough or strong enough mentally or consciously, they can break out of these realities and come back to that one specific universe that they are from. Because these are all the other possibilities. We all have our own universes. So Superman will be, like, let's say he would see all the other Earths. Earth 1, he's already Earth 1, but like say he sees Earth 10, 11, Earth X, Earth 1 million, this and that, right? He sees all these other universes, but if he's strong enough mentally to realize that those are not his universe and where he came from, he can break out the illusion and come back. So that's one way to break out of that, is by realizing, because basically, and I think a character recently that had this was Angstrom Levy from, what's the thing called? Invincible. He combined with all of his other multiversal counterparts, and his brain was kind of going in and out with all the other multiversal versions of himself and the effects. So he was living the lives of all the other versions of himself, and it was hard for him to connect back to who he was. So it's the same thing in this. As long as you realize that those other universes aren't yours, they are the other possibilities that you go through. But if you realize you're one, you can break out of it. So that's just a way. But after this, we see the Gurren Lagann finally reaching its max level. I think it was called Galaxy Gurren Lagann. And as it's doing it, it transforms and it turns so big, you see it emerging from this galaxy. As it comes out, it stands and we see the full scope to the size of the Gurren Lagann itself. It is large. It is around certain galaxy level. I would say it's around maybe mid-range galaxy level, because you see in the image, he is definitely smaller than the galaxy itself, right? He's smaller than the galaxy, but later on we see them being able to, be bigger and grab onto other galaxies, and they didn't even grow bigger. So, because if you know anything about science, you would know that not all galaxies are the same size, just like planets, just like stars, just like asteroids. Everything has different ranges of sizes, so it depends. There are smaller galaxies, there's larger galaxies. I think the biggest galaxy in our universe that we discovered was like around 400,000 times the size of ours. So our galaxy is like 100,000 light years. So that was like 400,000 times 100,000 light years. It's insane. So the ranges can go astronomically high. Some galaxies are smaller than ours, some are bigger than ours, some are the same size as ours, some are roughly the same size. So I would still put them at galaxy level, but maybe mid to low galaxy level. After this, the Spiral King ends up going from just being a computer to having a body, and Simon's wondering what happened. He explains to you, we are in a super spiral universe where thought is given form. And then he said, this is only a temporary body, but it allowed me to join you in this fight. So what happened was, like I said, this is an imaginary world. You can imagine what you want. It's still limited, but it's limited to the imaginary universe. You cannot have, this power is only possible in that universe. Outside of it, you're in the regular reality, and you cannot change regular reality with just your mind unless you have that power, like reality warping. But this is not reality warping. So this dimension, anything can happen, and he created himself a body, but even with that, he said his body would be temporary. So even though you can create whatever you want, there's still a limit to it. It's not like it's limitless. But he created his body to help him out fighting, and he says the super spiral universe where it has the highest amount of spiral energy, because you see countless galaxies, and all those galaxies have spiral energy in it. So by going to this universe, they were able to increase their power. That's how the anti-spiral got so powerful, and that's how the Gurren Lagann gained so much power because it was able to absorb other spiral energy. It's kind of like Naruto, where he has the sage mode. Regular like chakra power is like the power from within, but sage mode not only has the power from within, but it absorbs chakra from the nature and the world itself. Same thing here. They can gain more spiral power from within themselves by having a fighter spirit or a warrior spirit and believing in themselves, but they can increase it also higher by absorbing that spiral energy from outside sources like galaxies. And since they're in a universe full of that spiral energy, they're able to do it completely. Also, we see later on, as they're standing across the galaxy, they're both evenly sized, but they're far smaller than the galaxy itself, which is important because people talk a lot about when they mention Gurren Lagann, they mention usually the size of the anti-spiral and the Gurren Lagann itself. They're saying it's as big as the universe, but here we see it's only like the size of a galaxy, so it's galaxy level. And we see even more as, Gurren Lagann gets punched into a universe, not a universe, into a galaxy itself. So they're now like basically affecting these galaxies. The anti-spiral starts attacking him, starts firing off lasers. He says, this universe is under our complete control. And you guys are probably wondering why I'm keep saying our or like them or him. The reason why I say that is because the anti-spirals were an entire race, but they ended up basically killing themselves and converting all their consciousness into one. So they're basically many and one, kind of like Ermac from Mortal Kombat, where he's an amalgamation of multiple souls, but also one specific soul as all of them. So they're multiple people, and he said that he has control of the universe. Like I said, this world is imaginary. He would not have control over the regular universe because that regular universe is reality. This is imaginary, whatever you believe in. And since he was there first and has been there for a while, he's had control over the imaginary power for quite a while too. So this is like a power that's connected to the spiral power, but also a little bit different. So the reason why this is important, because people might say, well, this means that he's a universal level being or he has universal level control, but like I said, it's just the dimension he's in. If he goes to the regular universe, he cannot use this. So if you're using this in a debate, don't. It will not work. If he's in a debate within a neutral world, he cannot manipulate it because he does not actually have reality warping powers. The dimension, you can warp reality just by thought. Like, let's say I go there. I could do the same thing. I don't have reality warping powers. I can go there and warp reality and control it. Obviously, more levels of power, you can control it to higher magnitudes. And since he has a lot of power, he can control the universe itself. After this, we see as he's fighting, the Gurren Lagann, it has some snipers, and it sees something on its forehead and shoots it, and ends up shooting it, destroying it, and it says that's the anti-spiral's homeworld. So you see the homeworld on top of the head, which kind of messes up the scaling of the size, because like I said, the size scaling is very important because people mention it all the time when it comes to Gurren Lagann. They're always talking about how big the Gurren Lagann is and how big anti-spiral is, but it's a little confusing because we see him on top of a galaxy. They're obviously smaller than the galaxy, but then he has his homeworld on his forehead, which would be around planet size. And obviously, there's bigger planets. This is probably a large planet, but even a large planet would not be visible if it's around something that's the size of a galaxy or bigger than a galaxy, right? Unless maybe he was able to imagine it being this big, but I don't know. It's just confusing. As it goes on afterwards, we see him attacking. He says, and drove the few surviving life forms to the far corners of the universe. He starts like tweaking. He starts grabbing the galaxies. And as this happens, he's sick and tired of the Gurren Lagann, so he's just going on completely to smash him into pieces. As he does this, he kicks him, and he kicks him so hard he smashes through a galaxy, destroying it. And then he goes through even another galaxy, destroying it. So he hits him really hard. He's just like, screw it, I'm sick and tired of playing with you, I'm going to go all out. He starts charging him, he smacks him into a galaxy. Now, how many galaxies did he destroy? From what I did when I watched it, I was pausing it frame by frame to count each and every one. He destroyed 7 galaxies. So in his rampage of smashing the Gurren Lagann, he was able to smash him through 7 galaxies. So at the very least, the Gurren Lagann is able to handle being smashed through 7 galaxies, and the anti-spiral is strong enough to smash him through 7 galaxies. But as this happens, we see the Earth, and it gets confusing, and they say some sort of fold in the space of fabric of space-time maybe. As the Goen says, probably interacted with the spiral realm perceptual teleportation system, and it created a space-time teleportation bypass. So what does this mean? Before this, they were fighting. We just see all these galaxies, but now we can see the Earth. There's a portal or a hole open to the Earth itself. Some people might be assuming that, this basically means that the anti-spiral not only hit the Gurren Lagann so hard that it destroyed 7 galaxies, but it also tore a hole through space-time from even the imaginary world to the regular world. But that isn't true. What happened was the ship that they're using, since the Gurren Lagann is basically the ship, they're fighting with a ship that amalgamated together. With the ship, they could, they have a teleportation device on it, and that teleportation device is how they got there. But when they got hit, it hit them so hard that it kind of messed up the teleportation system, kind of fried it, and doing so, it opened up a portal. So no, it wasn't that he hit him so hard that he breached a hole through, the imaginary dimension into the regular world. He just hit the mech so hard that the machine itself that had the teleporting system kind of is on the fritz, and it activated itself, sending it off. So yeah, if anybody uses that in an argument, just know that isn't the case. What happened was he attacked the mech. It was the system that did it. It wasn't the power. So after this, we have him, fighting, and they're trying to damage him, and he blocks. But even as he blocks, he gets hit. And what happened was they explained it was the probability altercation missiles. So before Anti-Spiral had the probability altercation missiles, but now they have it, and they were able to, in mid-battle, create it. How did they create it? Since they're, once again, in the imaginary universe, they don't need to really create anything physically. They can just imagine it. So if whatever he can think of, they could think of. Since he thought of the probability missiles, they thought of it too, so they used it against him. But it didn't really do any significant damage. It was just to, have the other characters do something. So they hit him a little. So it's powerful, but it's not that powerful. As they see, as this breach, the hole, it got completely breached, and it stays there throughout the rest of the fight. So the people now are able to see it. Before, they were fighting in the imaginary dimension, just them, but since they the machine kind of opened the wormhole, or the portal, now they can see it, and they see these 2 giant mechs fighting, and they say, hey, tomorrow we choose out of the infinite universes, we will keep fighting to protect the universe. So this is basically the main character, Simon. He was basically saying that we don't care how many universes there are, we will fight, and we will choose to fight in the infinity of the universes, because multiverse theory suggests that all of our actions create other universes, which will create an infinite possibility of universes. But does this mean that this is threatening all the realities? No, because they constantly mention the universe itself. They're trying to protect this said universe, not the entire multiverse. But they see it, and they look big, but they're not that super big because they can see them over the Earth. But the reason why they don't look as big is due to the fact that the portal, when you open up, if you see the portal and where they are, they're way further away. Even like the moon looks like big, but it doesn't look that big. But it's still really big. It's just that it's super close to us. It's really close to us. So that's the reason why they kind of look smaller or not as big as they should, because they're so astronomically far away. They're so astronomically far away that they look smaller. But in reality, they're bigger. The closer they were to get to them, the bigger they would be. And if you get right up to them, they'll be the size of a galaxy. But the further away, since they're so far away and also in another dimension, they just look like they're big as the planet or the size of a mountain. As this happens, the Spiral King is just, Anti-Spiral is just done with it. He grabs 2 universes, and he does the iconic scene where he collides the he grabs 2 galaxies and collides the 2 galaxies, merging it into one galaxy. And as he's firing the attack, basically they say that it's on par with the birth of the universe, and it says almost like the Big Bang, and he even calls the attack Infinite Big Bang Storm. So yeah, he fired off the Big Bang attack. Now, not Vegeta's Big Bang attack, but this leaves people to say that the fight in the Gurren Lagann stuff, it was around, what's the thing called? They say that it's around universal, right? Because anytime
when I've heard people talk about it, this fight, they mentioned that he was able to create an energy that's so powerful that it replicated the Big Bang, and it fired off a Big Bang, like an attack that has the power of the Big Bang, meaning that it's universal, right? I wouldn't agree with that, and I'm gonna give you more of my thoughts toward the end of the video because I'm almost done with it. But I'll give you more of my thoughts on the end of the video. But I do not agree that that is universal. One of the reasons is, if you guys know anything about the Big Bang, I explained before, and I made a whole video on the Big Bang itself, and why characters who have power, or like, let's say they could fire an energy attack that's equivalent to the Big Bang, is not equivalent to, a universe-busting feat. And the reason why I say that is, one, scientifically, the Big Bang was not an explosion; it was an expansion and heat. So, if anything, if somebody survives the Big Bang, they will not be surviving a universal level, destructive explosion. They'll be surviving high levels of gravity and heat. That's it. That's not an explosion. So they'll survive the a universal level of gravitational pressure and heat, but not destruction. So you can't really equate it to that. And some people might say, well, this is fiction, so who maybe the writer's like, well, the Big Bang was an explosion. But seeing as how this writer is trying to make it scientifically accurate, I highly doubt that he does know that the Big Bang wasn't a Big Bang. And the reason why I say that is because there's another scene that kind of contradicts that. And some of you guys might say, well, what's the importance of it? It is important because to say that, well, this attack replicates the Big Bang, that means that it's universal, is not true. Because the universal thing is the destructive power. It's important because people, when they hear Big Bang, they hear universal level of power or universe buster, right? But that isn't a universe busting feat because the Big Bang wasn't a universe busting or event. It was an expansion, and it was just high amounts of gravity and heat. It was not an explosion, so it wouldn't be considered universe busting even if they can replicate the Big Bang. And the argument that it's fiction, so they can go with whatever, it's only if they acknowledge it or believe that that's what it is. Because yes, fiction doesn't need to follow our rules, but it does need to follow the rules of the writer. And the writer is going with more of a scientific knowledge. So I don't think it's really universal. Now, why, or universal? Now, even if you want to make the argument, let's just say for argument's sake that, well, what if it is, what if, the writer doesn't believe that? How do you know? Well, the next image proves it, as he fires it off and he says, "Burn in the everlasting hellfire of the universe's creation." So he himself mentioned the, fire or the heat of the universe. He never mentions the destructive power of it. He would have said something like, try to last the destructive power of the universe's creation. But he says the hellfire, the heat. So he's talking about the heat specifically. Like I said, it was an event that happened. When it happened, the Big Bang, it released a ton of gravity and heat. It didn't release a destructive power, or like when we measure like a bomb, like the megatons of TNT or just amount of TNT that it releases. It's not the same thing with this. So I think even the writer himself acknowledges that when he did the attack, it was not firing off destructive power, but amount of heat that he would have to get hit by. So you can kind of argue that it's universal, but there's arguments against it. While this is happening, though, it's about to hit him, and you think it does hit the Gurren Lagann, but nope. Apparently, the Spiral King, he went in to try to stop it, so he used one of his mechs. He jumped out to grab onto it. He actually holds off the attack for a bit until it ends up destroying him. But this was part of his plan. What he was trying to do was he was going to make himself a sacrifice and let the attack hit him. Once when the attack would hit him, he would let it destroy him and then use that power while he was dying to convert that energy into a giant spiral. And once it converted to a giant spiral, you see the Gurren Lagann grabbing onto it, so it's like a big drill, and then he absorbs the power. So what happened? The Spiral King sacrificed himself, died, ended up converting that Big Bang energy into a giant spiral drill, and thus this Gurren Lagann absorbed it, increasing his power so much to the point where it was now able to overcome the anti-spiral. As he goes on to say, "Mark my words, this drill will open a hole in the universe." So a universal size hole, and then he flies right through him, ends up killing. He flies right through him. As the fight was happening, they were like creating giant drills, and they were hitting each other. The drills were breaking, and the Gurren Lagann was breaking. So he shot out the small part of the head where he first came from,
and he was able to drill a hole through the anti-spiral, killing him that way, setting off a massive explosion. It's pretty big, and then afterwards, the imaginary dimension is gone. The Gurren Lagann and the mechs are all destroyed. They're in like little escape pods, and it's gone, and the dimension's gone. Now, this leads a lot of people to believe that they were able to destroy an imaginary dimension and a dimension that was in between the 10th and 11th. So that dimension or universe they're destroying is more than destroying a regular universe, because destroying a regular universe, right, would put you at universal, but even though that's considered a universe, it's a 10th or 11th dimension, meaning that it would be at least boundless and stuff like that, right? But there's a little contention to that, and I'll explain that later on. But it says right here, the energy that maintained that universe between dimensions has vanished. And that was pretty much the end of the show. That's what happened at the end of there. But wait, there's more. This is a little bit more complex and confusing. Why? Because apparently the Gurren Lagann show, it did something where it had like the show and then it had 2 movies. Now these 2 movies are actually basically just OVAs. They're redoing the show and the story, and this is where we usually get one of the big feats or scaling for the feats from people, because a lot of people usually when they show the fight between the Gurren Lagann versus the anti-spiral, it's not the regular Gurren Lagann versus the anti-spiral from the show, it's from the movies. The first movie was covering the first half, the second movie covered the second half, and they just changed a couple things up here and there. So I'm going to go through the movie and how they changed up the fight. As we see the fight in this one, when Gurren Lagann gets his power to grow, the other one he was the size of a galaxy, but this one he grows even bigger, and he says, we carry the burden of our little regrets. And we see also the anti-spiral growing in size too, so you can match them up. They're so big, in fact, that now in the other one, he was around galaxy level. The galaxy that they were standing on, they were smaller than it, but in the movie, they grow way bigger to the point where you see countless other galaxies around it that are small and dwarfed in size. And then we see even bigger as the anti-spiral and Gurren Lagann start creating giant drills. We don't know how big these drills are compared to their body size, but to the size that they would be, I would put it around, it is a few times bigger, but if you've seen the image, you can see that the drill is at least like a couple dozens of times bigger than him. So it is bigger, but not unbelievably bigger. So we see the life around it, but once they more zoom out, you see how big it is. You see the other galaxies around it. It still dwarfs the other galaxies, but it doesn't completely dwarf them. And then we see even further as the rest of the universe that's there, it starts to absorb the galaxies. Since these galaxies have spiral power and they're trying to use all the spiral power, they're basically both sides. The anti-spiral is taking the galaxies from his side, and then the Gurren Lagann is taken from his side. They're converting it to their drills to overpower. But as they do it, they use up all the power, ends up breaking both their mechs. And this also is different than in the show. In the show, the way they did it was they were destroying. They didn't do any of that other galaxies, so that was not apparent in the show itself. But the mechs were getting destroyed as they got destroyed. The anti-spiral was destroying it, and to attack him, Simon used just the Gurren to jump out and attack him and drill through him and killed the Spiral King that way. Whereas in this one, he didn't use the mechs, he just came through himself. As he jumped, he started attacking the anti-spiral directly, so they just started going into a fist fight, which isn't that impressive, but it was pretty interesting. And the way he kills him, he forms a drill in his hand and he rushes through him. So the way he dies is different. The spiral one, in that one, he was still big, but in this one, he's just the size of a human, since Simon's also a human size. So he's the size of a human, and he gets, he drills right through him, ends up killing him. And that was pretty much the end of the movie and what happened. I didn't cover the other parts of the movie because it's basically the same feats, except for the final fight, which is upscaled due to their size. Now, since that is the end of the feats, I want to go into the thing as a whole. How powerful is the anti-spiral? How powerful is the Gurren Lagann? And where would I cap them off when it comes to their terms of power? Both in the show and in the movie. Because the movie would amplify their power more, and the size, because the size is something that's talked about quite a bit. When it comes to the power, it's a little confusing. I would put them around at most at the high ball. And I know some of you guys might think this is crazy, but at the high ball, Universal Plus. At the lowest ball, Multi-Galaxy. Why do I say that? Some people are like, well, no, these guys are, 11th dimensional, 10th dimensional. These guys are hyperversal. They're this and that. They're not universal. They'll say I'm crazy. Why?
But here's the reason why I think that. And it's specifically because of the Spiral Nemesis. The event is a universal level event, yet it's an event that will destroy them all. It's an event that scares the anti-spiral so much, even with all of his power. And even with how much Gurren Lagann can get powerful, it can prevent it by, regulating the power itself and controlling it, but not stopping the, Spiral Nemesis itself. So that already shows to me that they're at most universal or below. Why? Because the big threat is universal in nature, and they can't handle it. If they were beyond universal, like multiversal, a universal level destroying event wouldn't be a scare to them. The anti-spiral wouldn't be so serious or crazy about it. He would have been able to handle it. So I don't put it past that. And the only feat that we see that goes up to universal, or the ones, and I'm going to go through all the points. So the big threat is a universal level event. It will destroy only a universe. We do get mentioned that there's other universes, but the Spiral Nemesis is not destroying all universes. They would have said it would destroy the multiverse. They would have said it destroys all possibilities of all realities, but it did not. All it stated it was destroy this universe. So it's a universal level event, yet both these guys can't handle it, and they're both afraid of it, especially the anti-spiral. So how are these guys universal or beyond universal if they can't handle or stop a universal event? And the event is just basically all these energies becoming too much and creating a supermassive black hole. So they couldn't even handle a supermassive black hole that can destroy the universe. So that's why I don't believe it. Now, some people might say, well, you explained and you said that, what's the thing called? That the anti-spiral in that universe said that he was controlling the whole universe and he was that universe. But once again, like I said, that's a universe of imagination. The only reason he was controlling that universe wasn't because he's a universal being or has universal levels of, reality warping. It's because that dimension is specifically made for, imagining stuff. So you can imagine whatever, and that's what he did. He imagined himself controlling the universe. And some people say, well, what's the difference? The difference is if you put him in an actual regular universe like reality or against characters that are in a neutral zone or in their universe, guess what? He would not be able to manipulate it. It's only due to that dimension. Even I can do that if I go to there. If I go to there, I can warp reality and stuff like that, even though I'm not a reality warper. But the reason I can do it is because that dimension allows it through the possibility of imagination. That's the only reason it's possible. When you're in the real world, the reality is the same. In the impossible, you can do whatever. But once when it is realized, it is possible, then it is reality. And once when it's reality, it is not possible to do. That's why. So if he comes to the regular universe, he cannot do it because that's not possible for him to do. So yes, it does seem like he's a universal level in that regards, but when you think about it, where he's doing it, that's why it's happening. Of let's say he came to the regular their universe and was able to warp that or destroy it or do whatever, then you can say that. But this is a dimension where imagination runs supreme, so you can just do it through there. Sorry for the car, but but he is not universal himself. You guys are equating his effects on that universe as universal, but if he came to the regular universe, he wouldn't be able to affect it. Then, talking about the Big Bang. Once again, the misconception is the Big Bang was a massive explosion, so if you take the Big Bang, you're taking the explosion of the universe, but it was just a massive release of gravitational pressure and heat, which is still impressive. I'm not saying it's not, but it does not put it on universal levels of destructive power. That is an over-exaggeration. That's the other reason. Also, if you even if you, let's say for argument's sake that somebody is tackling the Big Bang and the Big Bang means literally an explosion, it still wouldn't be equivalent to the universe because the universe is only this size because it took 13.8 billion years. The explosion itself, if we had to, let's set off the Big Bang in the middle of the universe, it would not wipe out the universe instantly. It would take 13.8 billion years to wipe out the universe. That explosion would need to accumulate power and generate over that much amount of years or multiply enough that it could instantly do it. So it needs more power to do that because the power that we had, it increased as time went on, and that's why it keeps on growing. So even with that, just attacking with the power of the Big Bang is not equivalent to a universe, more of a minor universe. And before this, they were talking about how they had the power of a microcosm. Not even a universe, a microcosm, which is
smaller than the universe itself. So even there, and it said he said, let's see you last the everlasting hellfire. And remember, he didn't actually tank it. The Gurren Lagann didn't tank it. It was the Spiral King who jumped in to do it, and he converted that energy. And it was specifically mentioned hellfire, not the destructive power. So even the creator acknowledges that it wasn't an explosion. So that argument is also null and void, the Big Bang thing. And even if we do take it and let's ignore all the other arguments, it still would only be universal level feat or universal level plus. So that's why I'm saying at highball, it would be universal level plus, not multiversal. Now, some of you guys will say, well, when the explosion happened and he destroyed him, it destroyed the dimension between the 10th and the 11th. The reason why I do not think that that's universal level feat on 10th or 11th dimensional scaling is simply due to the fact that the bridge between they didn't say specifically that the universe was destroyed, the imaginary universe was destroyed, just the bridge that they had between it was destroyed. But even if, let's say, it was destroyed, would that make it on 10th or 11th dimension? No. Why? Because they cannot even handle a universe level destroying event. Because the event was still universal and it was destroying a 3/4D universe, not even a 10th or 11th universe. And they even said specifically that this will destroy the universe. When they were fighting, they're saying that the big power and most would destroy the universe, not in a 10th or 11th dimension itself. So I do think, yes, it can be confusing, and I can see why people think that there would be 11th or 10th level dimensional being. But seeing as how they were struggling against an event that would only destroy a 4D universe, they're clearly only 4D. At most, they're infinitely 4D or beyond infinite 4D, because all the events were only showing that. There's nothing that showed above that. They mentioned the universe multiple times, the threat of the universe, destroying the universe, or the universe getting destroyed. They themselves weren't even destroying the universe. So what would I cap them off as? More around multi-galaxy, because most of the feats we see them is destroying galaxies or throwing around galaxies. And at the highest end, it was just the heat and gravity of the universe. But if we want to go with, if I want to highball them, I would say universal plus. Some people go with the 10th and 11th because of that being in between that dimension. But like I said, even when they were talking about the destructive of the power, they're still just talking about the 4th dimension. So it would be infinitely 4D. So yes, they mentioned, sorry for that car, but even though they mentioned, even though they mentioned 11 and 10th, it was not an 11 and 10D, feat. So sorry for that, guys. But let's talk about the size. The size, it's been contested how big it is. In the show, it is shown to be around galaxy level, the size. So because we all see, video comparisons like the biggest beings in all of existence or the biggest beings in all of anime. People usually put the Anti-Spiral and the Gurren Lagann as the biggest things in all of fiction, right? In the original show, I would not say that because it's only galaxy level. It's impressively big, but there's other fictional universes and characters that are even bigger than that. And then if you want to go with the movie, which that's the feat that people usually go with, even if we want to go with the movie and say it's canon, whatever, okay, let's go with the movie's canon. Is he still the biggest being in all of existence? No. Is he the size of the universe? No. Why do I say that? If you see in the images, when they use the power, even when they use the drill, you see countless galaxies around them, but they are not bigger than the whole universe. As they zoomed out of the image, you see a few galaxies around there, but the rest of the space of the universe is bigger than them. So they're not actually the size of the universe. They are a percentage of the universe, but not the exact same size. They're definitely bigger than galaxies in multi-galaxy level, but they are not big as the universe. I still think that Super Shenron from Dragon Ball Super is the biggest character in all of fiction, or at least all of anime. And the reason why I say that is because same thing with Super Shenron. When he grew to his massive size, he was able to dwarf the size of the galaxies the same way. The galaxies looked the same around him too. The only difference was, even though he didn't encompass the entire 7th universe, he encompassed most of it. You see his wingspan, it was out to the outer edges of the universe. Whereas the Gurren Lagann, when they zoomed out, he was not... Gurren Lagann and the Anti-Spiral, with the massive size of the drills, were not as big as the universe. So I do think the people misunderstand the scaling of the size of the universe in what's they called in Gurren Lagann. I think they overscale him because if you look at the actual image, yes, he's bigger than a bunch of galaxies, but look at our universe for example. The universe, it contains 200 to I think 400 billion galaxies. In that image, there was countless galaxies, but nowhere near around 200, 400 billion. So our universe, they were like, say, they were to grow in our universe. For them to be universal size or bigger than a universe, they wouldn't need to be so big that you would see 200 billion universes being dwarfed by them. That was not the case. You saw a bit, but they were really as big as a universe because our universe is so big that even with the vast amount of distance that galaxies have, we can fit 200 to 400 billion galaxies, right? 200 to 400 billion. Yet, even with that being there, the other universe only had a few. And the reason why this is important and why you would have to think about this and think about a little more in context is of our universe can fit that many galaxies, that would mean that it's even bigger than that. But the universe that they were in, it didn't fit that many galaxies. And they were still not the full size of it as when they zoomed out. So I do think that people over-exaggerate the size of the Gurren Lagann and Anti-Spiral. But Super Shenron was actually almost the size of the universe itself. If you watch Dragon Ball Super, he was almost the size of the whole universe. He wasn't exactly the size, but he was almost the size of it. And he was around countless. Whereas this one, when they zoomed out, you see that there was still a lot more space. Even with these two giant beings and growing even bigger drills, you see that there's far more space and there's more galaxies. Now, why does the size matter? Because it does in these fights. It matters because it showcases destructive power. If they're bigger than a universe, that would mean that when they swing their attacks, it should have more power than a universe. And I think that's why people try to put them at universal size or beyond universal size. Because the argument I see a lot of times is the Gurren Lagann and Anti-Spiral can destroy a universe because they're bigger than a universe and their drill is bigger than a universe, so if they attack, they can destroy it. And that would be true if that was the actual size, but it is not. So trying to upscale them in size will upscale their destructive power. Downscaling them in size will downscale their power. So if you upscale them into universal size, that would mean that at least their attacks would have to be at least universal. But since they weren't that big, they would be downscaled to not that universal. So I don't think Gurren Lagann or the Anti-Spiral are universe sized, and their damage wasn't on universal scale either. So yeah, in the end of the day, that is how powerful I think they are. Speed-wise, we don't really see anything speed-wise really crazy. We don't see them saying they're moving faster than light and stuff like that. They're so big, though. Some people are like, well, they can span from galaxy to galaxy. Like, yeah, they're fucking size of one. That's why they're able to do it. They're so massive. Even if they take, like, one step slow as hell, they will be able to, cross, like, billions and trillions of miles. Not because of speed, just the sheer size. So, the speed, there isn't really any speed. I can't tell you how fast they are. They might be faster than light. I don't know. They don't show anything or say anything to make them faster than light. Most of their focus is mainly on their attack potency and their damage. Durability-wise, they should be the same as how much power they have. And I say multi-galaxy level because all the attacks we see just damaging galaxies. And at the highest end, I would say universal at most. The only thing that makes me, say that's a high ball is due to the fact that the universal level event, they can't handle it. The destruction of that universe, they didn't really show that it destroyed the universe, but in most of the say it did. Some people might say 10th and 11th, but it's like, if they were 10th and 11th, dimensional level of power, then the Spiral Nemesis, the end of the universe, wouldn't really be that dangerous. They would be able to handle it or prevent it, right? The fact that they can't handle it or prevent it clearly showcases that's not the case. Also, the big and most powerful attack that the other guy used was only equivalent to the Big Bang. And even if we want to use all the arguments, the Big Bang is only universal level, right? So are you going to tell me that they're 10th or 11th dimensional because they were fought in there, but the biggest and most powerful attack was stated to replicate the energy levels of the Big Bang? Not of that universe, but the regular universe. So that's at most, if we want to throw away any forms of logic, that would be a universal level attack. It had an amount of universal level power. So how are they 11th and 10th dimension? I think guys are focusing too much about the space dimension that they're in. So they're 11th and 10th, but it's like, even they stated the attack is equivalent to the Big Bang, which would only be equivalent to a 4D universe. And even then, when he fired at him, he mentioned the heat of the attack, not the actual destructive power. So yeah, I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate. I'm gonna have a lot of people disagreeing with me. It's fine, but that's just what I truly scale it as low ball, high multi, galaxy level, high ball, universal or universal plus. And no, he's not a 10th or 11th dimension. And no, Gurren Lagann and the anti-spiral are not universe sized. They are massively big enough to be, taking a large portion of the universe, but not the whole. And I do think Super Shenron is bigger than both of them combined. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned for next time.